Who's this? Aaron will kill you. Oh, you gotta put that.
Okay.
Welcome back to What She Said on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
This is What She Said. I'm Sharon Caddy along with Christine Bentley. What a lovely day we're having today. Some very positive, uplifting guests. We're staying in that realm today. In fact, with our next guest, this lovely lady has been named one of Canada's top 25 women of influence. Sara Austin from World Vision. Welcome to What She Said.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
And congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You must be just over the moon about this.
It's a huge honor, and I'm just really thrilled. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about, basically you have designed a law, and give us some background.
Well, I've been working with World Vision for over 15 years now, and my work has taken me to all kinds of corners of the earth. I've spent time working in Asia and Africa, Latin America, and really helping the children who are living on the margins, the most marginalized and vulnerable children on earth. And I was meeting children like a little girl named Noi, who was 12 years old. She was living on the streets of Bangkok, and she and her family were under a bridge. I got to meet her and spend some time with her. I was just shocked and appalled that she was living in those conditions. She was having to sell her body on the street to survive, to be able to, for her family to have the money to buy the food they needed to get by every day. And just shortly after I met her, she contracted AIDS and died shortly after. And I just was shocked and appalled that children were living in a state like that, and I was determined to do something about it. So I went about creating a law to help close the gap between the promises governments had made to children and the daily realities that children were faced each day.
And what's the law called?
It's called the Third Optional Protocol to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's really a powerful tool to put the power back into the hands of children to hold their governments accountable to the promises that were made to them.
And it was actually adopted by the UN.
It was. The law went into force in April of this year, and but it's really been a long process to bring it into force. It started 8 years ago when I was doing my master's studies at the University of Oxford. This had, as I said, come about from my experiences working with children overseas, where I was seeing them being exploited, and I thought we need to find a way to hold governments accountable to allow children or advocates working on their behalf to do something about it when they were being violated. So I designed a protocol that allows children or advocates working on their behalf to file a complaint with the United Nations and say, hey, this is what's happening, and have the UN investigate it. And if the UN finds that the government is guilty, they can order that government to provide a remedy for those children, but they can also order the government to change the laws and policies that make them vulnerable in the first place. So it could potentially impact the lives of millions of children around the world.
And do people like yourself and your colleagues at organizations like World Vision also then work to reach out to the people to let them know that this law actually exists?
Exactly. That's one of our big priorities right now is working with children around the world, helping them know, first of all, that they do have rights, and then when their rights are violated, that they have a way to seek justice and to get a remedy.
Yeah, and so looking forward then, I mean, obviously it takes time, it can take years for large-scale change to happen. How do you measure change? How do you measure the result of something like this?
Well, I think in a situation like this, we're really hoping that we'll begin to see complaints come to the United Nations. I mean, in an ideal world, children should never have to go through something like this, but we know that children fall through the cracks. Even here in our own backyard, there are children who just fall through the cracks of the system. And so the way that we measure change is in the lives of individual children when we see their standard of living improving. There are objective measures for the well-being of children, whether it's their education, their health care, protection from violence. These are ways that we can monitor progress and see change in the lives of children.
And I guess looking forward then into the next generation, if this generation is impacted positively, this should only be better as we move forward through the generations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had 25 years now of children's rights being protected in law. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child came into force in 1989, and we're celebrating that 25th anniversary this November at the United Nations. And we've seen in some ways progress being made over the past 25 years, but If you look, for instance, at child well-being here in Canada, I think the average Canadian thinks that our children are doing pretty well. But, when you look at how we actually objectively measure up to other countries, Canada is actually just middle of the pack. Canada is only 17 out of 29 affluent nations. I think that's pretty shocking. I think we expect our kids to be doing well off. We think of Canada as being one of the best places on earth for kids to live. But 17 out of 29 affluent nations isn't very good. And I think we need to be challenging our government and our society to do better for our children.
That is shocking, really.
That is shocking, and I'd like to ask, what is it that we're not doing right?
Well, there are a whole host of factors that we can measure, whether it's, some of the ways that children are falling through the gaps here include the violence that children experience in their homes or communities, whether it's bullying or domestic violence. Low immunization rates is a huge priority here in Canada. Shockingly, infant mortality rates are quite high in Canada, and that's particularly for children who are Aboriginal children who are living on reserves.
I was going to say, our First Nations have serious issues with this.
Yeah, so there are lots of children who are at high risk. And for instance, at World Vision, we work with charities all across Canada, really focused on child poverty issues. Right now, 1 in 7 children in Canada are living in poverty. That's a really shocking rate. And here in Toronto, in our own backyard, that rate jumps up even higher. 30 to 40% of children in Toronto are living in poverty. That's appalling. Those are epidemic levels of poverty. And in an affluent nation like this, that's just not good enough.
30 or 40% of children living in Toronto are living in poverty?
It's shocking.
Wow. I'm astounded.
Yeah, but it's an invisible population. You don't necessarily see what's going on behind closed doors, even because we have a public school system, the children may be in school.
Yeah, there are all kinds of ways where it just, as you said, it becomes invisible. But and if your own child is doing well, if kids in your neighborhood are doing well, you get a sense that kids are comfortable, that kids are doing okay. But these are kids who are living on the margins. So whether they're refugee children, Aboriginal children, kids from single-parent households, or kids who are living in the care of the state, those are really the kids who are at greatest risk. But I think, as a parent myself, I know that it's not just good enough for my kid to be doing okay. I want every kid in this country and every kid in the world to be doing all right. And I think most parents share that sense, but it's really a matter of educating people to say 1 in 7 kids in Canada being in poverty is shocking, and we all have a responsibility to do something about it.
What would you like to see happen?
I would love to see our government really rise to the challenge. Canada's had a really long history of being a champion for children here at home and abroad. Canada helped get this UN law in place for children 25 years ago, establishing children's rights. And we've played a long history of being champions for children in a whole host of different areas, whether it's in child labor, child trafficking. More recently, the Prime Minister's made child health a global priority. But what we really need is a national strategy for child well-being. We need a national strategy around how our government works at the federal and provincial level to protect our children. We need a national law to say these are the rights that children are afforded to in our own country. We need a national ombudsperson who would be an advocate for children to defend their interests within government. And we need our government to ratify this new protocol so that when children fall through the cracks, so that they have access to justice.
Well, in a country like Canada, it would seem that we should be facing so many fewer hurdles to rise above that 17th place listing than so many other nations that have so many more hurdles, greater hurdles to overcome. We should be able to get there.
Absolutely. When this law came into force 25 years ago, the governments around the world said that we would make children the first priority, that no matter what happened, children would be the first in all decision-making. I think as parents, we instinctively know that. We will make great sacrifices for our children. We will scrimp and save. We will cut back in every possible area to give our kids the best opportunities in life. And really now we have the opportunity as a nation and as an international community to do that, to put kids first and say, we may be in tough economic times, but we're going to find ways to cut back in other areas to put our kids first.
Well, now you just exude passion when it comes to these. What got you started doing what you do?
I've worked with World Vision for 15 years now, but my story actually goes back to early in life. I'm grateful that I grew up in a family that really cared not only about my own well-being, but about other children. When I was 4 years old, my parents opened our doors to a family of refugees who came from Laos. It was a mother and father and 2 little boys who had fled the political and and fled a conflict in Southeast Asia in 1979, and that family came to live with us for several months. And it was that experience of being a 4-year-old child myself and seeing that just because you're born in a different place on earth doesn't mean we have different rights. We all have the right to education, to a safe house, to live in a loving family, and that we can all play a role in making that happen. So it was a very profound experience for me as a child, learning that we all have the right to same opportunities in life, and that we all have a responsibility to help make that happen.
Well, I think at that age that you were as a child, you would just see these as other people. There's no discernible difference. It's just a matter of where you were living. This is the circumstance that you were in, and it's almost a shame that as adults we have difficulty seeing that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I think there's so many different ways that we can give children the opportunity to see that. I mean, whether it's here in our own community, we talked earlier about children living in poverty in our own neighborhood. There's ways that we can engage children if we have privileges and opportunities to be able to expose children to the other side of life, and whether it's through volunteer efforts, raising money, advocating. There's so many different ways that we can use our voice and our power and influence to help other children.
Well, that can really change if we can. I think that's such an important thing, and I know many families that have done it. I know many that haven't even begun to go there. I know, and it's awful to think. I do know of many people who don't do anything charitable at all, and exposing your children to the ability to make a difference in some way to other people in a charitable fashion, that will change the thinking of the future.
Absolutely. I think we need to teach our children that they are global citizens and that we are part of an international community, that we each have responsibilities to each other. We all have rights, but we also have responsibilities, and the ability to care and be compassionate and to demand justice for one another. And it doesn't have to be something as profound as opening your doors to refugees like my family did. You can sponsor a child through an organization. You can have a lemonade stand on your street. You know, there are so many simple ways that people can be involved in acts of charity and justice to help others.
Well, we hope that you'll stay with us because we have to take a short break, and we'd love to hear more about, because I am sure that you have plans that you haven't yet articulated for the future for children. So stay with us. This is What She Said on Canada Talks 167, and we will be right back after this short break.